In the last video, we were talking about some of those non-economic shifters of demand. We're going to keep going with them. And we're going to talk about three more. We're going to talk about lifestyles, technological forces, and advertising and promotion. So, lifestyles. We're going to go through a couple of examples of lifestyle changes and how that affects demand. Stuff like fashion changes in clothing and in vehicles. Demand for in-style goods shifts to the right. So things that are in style, think about the clothing that's in style today, the name brands that are in style today. If you are a individual who likes to wear Western wear, and think about the aspect of cinch jeans. I like to think cinch jeans are in style because that's what I wear. So the demand for clothing like cinch jeans is actually shifting to the right. And because they are more in style, more people are wanting to wear them, so the demand for that is higher versus demand for, say, out-of-style goods. Now, maybe an out-of-style good are like bell-bottom jeans. Bell-bottom jeans you don't really see, or parachute pants. You don't see parachute pants all that much anymore. That was maybe our parents' generation type deal. That was the style of goods back with our parents and those that were rocking out in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Well, those goods are out of style now. Unfortunately, they're out of style, and that demand curve is shifted to the left, whereas in-style goods shift to the right. Now, fashion is a moving deal, and we see that the in-style and out-of-style changes sometimes on a year-to-year basis, and what was in style may now be out of style. And as they come into style, the demand curve goes to the right. As they move out of style, it goes to the left. Now, another fact that we are seeing in terms of lifestyle is an increase in both spouses working outside of the home, and the social trend of increased women in the workplace. So as more women work and as both spouses work, and there isn't a stay-at-home mom or there isn't a stay-at-home dad, and as more people work, we actually see less time in food preparation. There's less time for the mom to cook dinner, or maybe the dad to cook dinner, or the husband or the wife to cook dinner because they're working all day. They work an 8 to 5, and then they come home at 5, and then they both need to work together to cook dinner. And they don't want to spend all afternoon cooking meals and spend maybe 3 hours cooking a meal. They want to be able to cook that meal very quickly, have less time in food preparation. So what is that doing? Well, it's actually increasing the demand for away from home food. We're seeing that the away from home food, stuff like eating at fast food in restaurants where neither of the spouses have to cook, is going up. Whereas it used to be maybe 25% or 10% of the meals that a family would eat were away from home, or they spent 25 to 10% of their income on away from home food. We actually see nowadays that's around 50%. That households these days are willing to spend about 50% of their income on either fast food or restaurants or away from home food because of that less time in food preparation. Also, because there's less time for them to make dinner, when they are eating at home, there's an increased demand for prepared foods, something that they could just pop in the oven and cook right there, like a TV dinner, or pop in the microwave, something that takes less time to prepare. And this time constraint also displays the fact that there's not just the budget constraint. There is a time constraint to demand as well. That time is valuable, and they're going to be concerned with their time, and that there is a time component in the demand as well. Well, what about technological forces? Well, as new technologies in food preparation emerge, just to bring in food and keeping in food and agriculture, as there's new technologies emerge that help decrease the time to overall prepare a meal, we see that it changes the demand in things. As there's more microwave ovens and refrigerators and freezers available, we see that how food preparation is being done is different. Before microwave, you didn't see as many corn dogs because you actually had to cook the corn dogs and actually fry them or pop them in the oven. Well, because of that, because of microwaves, we can now just make microwavable meals. And we're seeing that these new technologies change the way that we're preparing food. Because we now have refrigerators, we don't have to have as many goods with as much preservatives in them, or we don't have to have as many jellies or jams that in smaller containers. We can prepare that food a different way. Because of freezers, we can now have frozen goods rather than canned goods. Consumers, they want food prep to be easy and quick. So they're coming up with more convenience foods or frozen goods, something like Hot Pockets that you just pop in the microwave and warm up. Ready to serve and mixes, pre-made mixes. So one good example of this is if you want to go and make tacos tonight, rather than knowing actually how to make the seasoning yourself or the right kind of seasoning to make tacos, you can run to the store, buy taco shells that all you got to do is pop it in the oven, go and buy a pack of ground meat and taco seasoning, and then all the fixings as well. All you really got to do is mix that seasoning in and brown the meat, which doesn't take that long, and that pre-made mix saves you time and energy and those technological forces such as coming up with those pre-made mixes and those frozen goods ready to serve is changing the way that people are changing people's demand for goods. Improvements and developments in the processing and making. Stuff like Keurigs and single cup serving coffees are on the rise. Demand for stuff like Keurigs are on the rise because they're single servings. Boxed fruit juices and increase in the variety of blends have increased fruit consumption. So single serving boxed fruit juices has actually increased the consumption of fruit. Whereas before you had to consume a fruit by probably eating it or mixing it up in a pie or something like that. But because of boxed fruit juices, we're seeing an increase in consumption of fruit. Because of single serve coffees, we're seeing an increase in demand for K-cups. Cane and sugar beet consumption have been affected by the development of high fructose corn syrup. With high fructose corn syrup being a cheaper alternative to sweeteners, we're seeing that cane and sugar beet consumption has actually began to fall. Now, what about advertising and promotion? So, there's a couple of different aspects of advertising and promotion, such as generic advertising versus branded advertising. So, generic advertising are in full swing for generic commodities such as milk, citrus product, cotton, yogurt, cheese, butter, beef, pork, lamb. All of these are generic advertising. And what generic advertising is persuading consumers to buy a particular commodity. It's not a single specific good, but just a commodity in general. And we see this generic advertising in the slogans like, got milk, the other white meat, fabric of our lives, beef, it's what's for dinner. And as I say that, hopefully you're imagining Sam Elliott's voice, beef, it's what's for dinner. But all of that is generic advertising. You see none of these advertise for any specific brand. They're advertising for the industry as a whole, and that is what generic advertising is. So this food-related or beverage-related advertising is actually a multi-billion-dollar industry. Advertising is a multi-billion-dollar industry within the agriculture sector, whether it's generic advertising or branded advertising. So let's talk about branded advertising. What does branded advertising do? We talked about generic advertising as a way to persuade consumers to buy a particular product and increase the demand of that particular commodity. Whereas branded advertising and promotional efforts are meant to make the demand curve. It's actually meant to shift that demand curve and make it steeper by developing brand loyalty. Making that demand curve steeper actually makes it less price responsive. So let's think about it this way. We could have a type of generic advertising for oats, just encouraging people to eat cereal altogether. And then this branded advertising might be like Tony the Tiger advertising for Frosted Flakes. And it wants people to be worried about so much about prices of that cereal in general, but actually make them less price responsive where they want to buy Frosted Flakes. Specifically Frosted Flakes. It's going for a specific brand and making it more brand loyal. So lifestyles can change. The demand curve, stuff that's in style, will shift it further to the right. Out of style is going to the left. As people's lifestyles change, it makes the demand for certain products higher, such as there's an increase in demand away from home food, increase in demand for prepared foods for at home. Technological forces change what we buy and our availability of what we buy and how we buy things. Like, for example, we see a lot more microwavable goods nowadays. The demand for that is going up. And then advertising just encourages us to buy more, thus changing the demand for the goods that we buy as well.